all, and welcome back to another thrilling episode of Off the Dome. I'm your humble and Jordan Brown, and with me for the very first time is our awesome athlete. Say hi, awesome athlete.
Hi, awesome athlete.
I mean, it was really difficult because I was like, God, he's so many things. I don't want to boil him down to just one thing. Johnny, thank you so much. This is so exciting.
Absolutely.
Athletics Check is back for season 2, but before we get into it, I want to start immediately with a fight. Superman is cool. How dare you?
When did I say Superman wasn't cool? What did I do?
In the season 2 premiere of Athletics Check, you're like, Superman's boring. And I was like,
jeez.
I'm ready to pick a fight right out the gate.
I recorded that like in November or something. It's like, oh God, what did I say? I like Superman. I just was never a reader of his comics.
That's fair.
The good writers do a good job of making Superman interesting because there's plenty about his story that is interesting. It's more just the fact that I love the underdog story. You know, I love the people who are able to beat the odds, even if I don't think they're not many superheroes who are considered underdogs, but I consider Aquaman my favorite superhero to be an underdog because of the whole, being made fun of for 20 years.
Yeah, that's super fair. Look, I like to start in a weird note to just throw things out the window. But
put me on my heels. Yeah.
Yes. Always the best place to start is a weird question right out the gate. But speaking, like I said, you talked about this on Athletics Check, your podcast where you interview people.
That's right.
How does it feel to have the tables turned here and have to be interviewed yourself?
I am so excited to get to a day where there are more episodes of Athletics Check that I interview somebody than I am getting interviewed on other people's podcasts, because that'll mean that Athletics Check is in a good place and has been, doing exciting things. I'm always grateful to be invited onto people's shows and to get people to talk about the whole reason why I make Athletics Check, just in general, because it's kind of the essence of the ethos that I try to put out there, that people are more than one thing and that it's okay to be parts of different communities, even if they seem to clash, like an 80s, high school movie. But I would, I am still learning as an interviewer. I think that Athletics Check is really exciting for me to be able to invite some of these people that I wouldn't normally get to talk to. I have an episode coming up very soon with Mike Golick Jr., who is a analyst for ESPN. His father is a longtime analyst for, sports commentator and everything for several different networks, Mike Golick Sr. And, these guys are, some of the people, especially within the sports community, are known in a very, very large audience, as big as the D&D tabletop gaming performance actual play side of the community is. Sports fandom is so big that having any kind of place in it is exciting, and being able to bring people from that space, because I have the smallest modicum of credibility within it, is fun to play around with.
Yeah, I understand a small modicum of credibility. That's what this whole podcast is based off of.
No.
I one of the things that I really like about Athletics Check is that you ask your guests to break down like a percentage of like nerd to jock ratio. I also appreciate that you were like, nerd has been reclaimed, jock has not. It is still an insult. I don't look. I will admit I haven't listened to every episode. I don't think I've heard you say your percentage. Does it change all the time for you? Like after you launch something like Sync, are you like, okay, well, it's got to be more in the nerd direction now. I'm doing a whole tattoo D&D thing.
I think there's a lot of different ways to calculate that. A lot of people kind of resort to time spent, and if it's time spent, it's like there's only so much time you can spend working out or like watching sports. And I think being a jock, quotations marks for those of you who are listening on the podcast version, I don't know if this is video or not,
it's everything.
There are a lot of things that encapsulate being like a nerd or being a jock, and it's not just being a sports person. It's not just working out. It's kind of, I had a conversation with Travis McElroy yesterday where I got to have him on Athletics Check, and he mentioned how he likes to, he's gotten into blacksmithing, and I think I think that kind of works in both categories. Like that's a nerdy activity especially if you're kind of in the fantasy kind of idea of like, oh, I'm a blacksmith making swords for a warrior. Whereas the blacksmithing in general, like the actual practice of it, is pretty athletic and pretty jock oriented. So I think it's more than just time spent. I think it's passion driven, and like, what are you spending your energy thinking about and enjoying? So I think I try to, I like to tell people, I like to try to stay around 50-50. But that alternates. And I also don't think that there's necessarily a goal in mind. There's not I want to try to keep this perfectly balanced. It's just more of like a, you know, I'm not somebody who relies on, like, necessarily adheres to the beliefs of like a zodiac sign, but I do like the mirror that it holds up to be able to find aspects that you like or maybe don't like about yourself. And I think that's a similar way, like, try to designate a ratio of jock to nerd within yourself, and then at the end of the episode, after we've had this conversation and where I'm hopefully recognizing some of the attributes of you that send you into the other category, would that ratio, would that percentage change over the course of the conversation now that you've kind of had that different perspective?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I love, as you were explaining like your 50-50 ratio, I'm looking behind you and seeing footballs next to a sword, next to,
Yep.
I don't know exactly what, it's Dungeons and something. I can't read
Dungeons and Drag Routes. It was the title of our Sports Illustrated article from my D&D group with the Cleveland Browns.
That's very good. Yeah. I was just saying, like, as you're explaining your belief, I'm like, it is perfectly encapsulated.
There's another sword right here in case you didn't see it.
Amazing. Yes. That's so good. Yeah.
It's my tableau.
That is your second McElroy then on the show.
It's true.
You had Clint on. One of the things that I love about your interviews specifically is you get to, like, you very clearly, because like, you clearly talked to one of his sons about him.
It was his wife and his childhood friend.
Oh, that's so fun. But like, you have an inside lane that you can get, which is so fun, because like, I have to just get online and be like, all right, what's the like you have a Wikipedia page. Most of the people I interview don't. I'm hopeful that they have their own website and it's been updated anytime in the last decade. And I'm just like poring over those things, but you get to be like, all right, tell me a wild story about your husband that I can ask him about his days in high school.
Yeah, no, I get to, I do it some more than others for different episodes. Some people are very hard to get in contact with their significant other or their parents or a friend of theirs or whatever. Some are easier to reach out to than others are. Clint was a fairly easy one because I've spoken to his lovely wife Carol before, and I knew that if I was able to speak to the McElroy's manager Amanda, who's a lovely person, that she would be able to get me in contact with Carol, and then Carol was able to get me in contact with his childhood friend, and it was just like a whole web of like, okay, there's far more information here that I'm getting than anybody that I'd be able to get otherwise. And I started that tradition with Athletics Check of going the Nardwuar route of trying to like surprise people with like the information that I've learned, with the very first episode with Amy Vorpal. And Amy's episode was super fun. It was my first time ever running Athletics Check, and I have a great relationship with Amy. I consider her my TTRPG big sister. She's amazing. And I got to talk with one of her Muay Thai coaches, and somebody who she trained alongside, who then rose up the ranks at her gym and became a coach. And I actually made her cry from one of the things that he told me about her, because he left this amazing message on Instagram DMs. And then later on, Amy and I, which we haven't released yet on the Patreon, so go check out the Athletics Check Patreon, because it is coming out soon. We did a workout about a year ago, probably a little bit less than a year ago, at Amy's Muay Thai gym, working with her coach. So that was it's a cool little circular moment where we got to bring it all back together, and I got to see Amy in her element, which was kicking my ass.
Yeah, that's super fun. Yeah, I will say, like, when I first started this podcast, I also had like a similar, like, who am I going to be? And I was like, I'm going to be like Sean Evans. I'm going to do a deep dive and like blow them away. And then I was like, it turns out you really need a team of researchers to be able to do that.
A team of researchers, and you need it to be a full-time job, because First Week Feast, I'm sure, pays them a lot of money.
Yes. Yeah. And then I was like, you know what I could do? I could do bits. That's probably where I'll lean into. It's like you're a great interviewer.
Thank you.
Out the gate. And like I said, I think it's a really interesting idea because there is, I mean, like we've seen it, especially I think feels like Critical Role like kind of launched this like, hey, this is a safe space for like jocks to become nerds. With like Travis Willingham comes out, like like Joe Manganiello, Travis Willingham, like you see the jock group of guys that are like, yeah, we are not what you would. We are not your stereotypical Dungeons and Dragons player,
Right.
and it's really interesting to think about, like as you have pointed out many times, that like sports for almost everyone is still a pretty nerdy pursuit. Outside of like if you're playing in sport, like very athletic, but if you were playing fantasy football, that's just a game of like
Of course.
analytics and like like you're
Being
playing the numbers.
Being a fan is just nerdy in general. It's a common refrain that I have in my podcast is that nerdiness is just a synonym for passion. And I haven't come across many more passionate people than, for example, Cleveland Browns fans or people who are really passionate about their team and go every Sunday or every game day. And that's nerdy. Like, I don't think that they would even fight that. Like, it's nerdy to be that into it. It's like, think about, I was just thinking, for some reason, I was thinking about the old Jimmy Fallon movie Fever Pitch with Drew Barrymore. And for some reason, I had Justin Long in that role, not Jimmy Fallon. And maybe that was just my own rewriting of the history in my mind because I don't love Jimmy Fallon. I like Justin Long though. But that movie about, that character's obsession with the Boston Red Sox. And then it kind of builds it into the whole like 2004 World Series championship that they got for the first time in decades and 80 years, I think. All of that to say, there's nobody nerdier than the guy whose living room looks like a gift shop of his favorite team. And, there are different levels to that. And I think it's just about like recognizing that nerdiness within yourself. So that's why I don't think that, some people consider jock and nerd to be a binary. And, it's obvious to know that like, okay, it's not a real binary, but it's also not like competing forces in any kind of way. They're both just like different versions of being passionate.
Yeah. Let me say this. I hate Fever Pitch so much as a lifelong St. Louis Cardinals fans. The audacity of them recording the final of the movie on our home field. I hate that movie.
Yeah, no, I get it.
It's very funny you mentioned like Cleveland Browns fans being very passionate. I have a Patreon where one of the perks of the Patreon is I always post like when I'm going to do an interview, like do people have questions that they would like me to ask, and like they can suggest questions. And someone literally just wrote "Dog Pound Proud" and a YouTube link to you catching a touchdown in the NFL, and that was it. There was
so much
no
question, more of a comment.
Yeah. Literally just like, hey, I want to make sure he caught a touchdown as a Cleveland Brown. I'm like, yeah, I know. Like
that's the jersey that I wore, and that's the football that I scored with.
Amazing.
Below a WizKids mini of not Tiamat, the Platinum Dragon,
Bahamut. Yeah. I have to assume that like catching that touchdown feels like a nat 20 in real life. Like it's got to be that, right? Like
it's not even that. It's a for somebody who scored once in the NFL, it's probably different than say one of my teammates, Odell Beckham Jr. He scored a bunch in the NFL. That's if you're like having a normal campaign and you're rolling nat 20s like maybe once every session, once every other session or whatever. It's more like I had a game in which we were playing Ravenloft, Strahd. We were playing Strahd, and we had the finale. We were losing against Strahd, and it was kind of a hodgepodge version of it where we were fighting in an area where it's not the campaign doesn't technically end at, but this was going to be the end of our campaign, and we were definitely going to lose. Strahd was kicking our butt. And one of our players had a wooden stake in his inventory. And he says, can I, last ditch effort, can I try to stab Strahd through the heart with this wooden stake? And our DM, Rick, who's my co-writer for Sync, says, it's not like, per the rules, there are mechanics to how you kill Strahd, and a wooden stake is part of it, but it has to happen within his coffin. But this is like, he's distracted with another person at this point. He's kind of like monologuing at this point, kind of overconfident. So I will let you roll to see if you can stab Stroud through the heart, but you have to get on a nat 20. And sure enough, our campaign ended on a nat 20, the perfectly timed nat 20. And, I can't even say that just a little, for the football fans out there, a Spider 3 Y corner, John Gruden's favorite play. It's a simple little play action play. It was a 3-yard catch or whatever. And, but it felt like my perfectly timed nat 20, because it doesn't matter what it feels like to anybody else or what anybody else's, relevancy or context. It was, for me, one of the 4 NFL games that I played in, one of the 5 that I suited up for. I scored a touchdown and it ended up deciding the game on national television the same night that Critical Role had their campaign 3 premiere. It just ended up being like the perfectly timed situation.
Yeah, I missed the game because I was at a movie theater watching the Critical Role Campaign 3 premiere.
I think I've told this before, but I did have a ticket to to a movie theater to watch it, because I forgot that we had Thursday Night Football that game. Usually you'll have one game a season that you have a game on Thursday night, and it just so happened to align, and it just so happened to be one of the games that I was starting at.
Yeah. Probably for the best that you skipped the move.
I did get a refund on that ticket.
Oh, good. I'm glad. I feel like that'd be an easy thing in Cleveland to be like, hey,
everything's online though.
Yeah, well, yeah, fair enough. But like, if you called and you're like, hey, I got to play for the Browns, they'd be like, whatever you need.
Yeah, the high school kid who is working the movie theater is like, I don't know if I can do it.
Yeah. I know, like, one of the things that you've talked about that I think is really fascinating is sort of, not that you fell out of love with football, but you had a strained relationship after you left the NFL, and that fantasy football really helped bring you back into loving the game. And I was thinking about it in terms of like nerddom, of how an actual play might bring someone who's had like a terrible TTRPG experience back into the game. It's just like seeing and being able to enjoy something again from a fresh perspective. I don't really have a question here. I just think it's really cool that you are open and talk about it, and that. I don't know.
Yeah. No, leaving the NFL after getting cut. There's a whole process. Not there really isn't a process. There's a time in which, after you get cut from a team, where you're working really hard as if you're still practicing and playing regularly to get back onto a team. And for many people, you get cut on Tuesday, which is 90% of cuts happen on Tuesday. You get cut on Tuesday, and then within a week or two or a couple weeks, you end up getting at least another workout. And I never got another workout since I got cut by the Browns in September of 2022. I kept on waiting for it. I kept on hoping for it. I kept on working and switching positions and seeing what would happen. And, all of that work around football, while not being able to play it, makes it really hard to enjoy it. When you're in the league, you don't really watch games on Sundays. Maybe you have like a morning game, and then you'll have the opportunity to watch at night. And you're really only watching if you're if you're with a group and the game is on TV. You kind of just want to get away from it when you're not playing or when you're not practicing. You'll watch film, obviously, but getting back into the habit and enjoying watching football on Sundays or Thursday nights or what have you, has been a long process, because I can't think it's a similar reason for like a lot of people that I knew like in college or like in the dating scene before I met my wife. It's like, oh, you see on like dating profiles, like, oh, I like to hike. I'm like, I can't imagine hiking, to be completely honest, because all that energy would just be like lost, and the next day's practice, I would be that much more tired and sore trying to recover, because I'm just like, after practice, you're exhausted, or after a game, you're exhausted, and you've spent all of this like energy and muscular fatigue and mental energy trying to focus in on this thing. Like, any given practice, like, you're trying to focus in, because it could lead to snaps during that week. It could lead to you getting playing time. Let alone the wins and losses. So yeah, there's a love-hate relationship with experiencing the game, and loving the game as a player is a much different experience than loving the game as a fan. And I had to reteach myself how to become a fan of the game, and I still am in the middle of that process. But it's it's a difficult process to go through because you're expected to like want to watch the game. I remember the first time I watched a Cleveland Browns game with a friend because it was on Thursday night, and he's a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, didn't hold it against me, I don't hold it against him, and he invited me to watch the game. It was Thursday Night Football, and I remember thinking that I was so miserable. My wife, then fiance, was just like, I think, paying attention to me, and then it got to halftime, and she leans over and says, "Hey, do you want to take a walk?" I said, "Yeah, I do." So I took a walk around like the block or something, and I'm like, when we get back, I think we should probably go because I just don't think that I'm a very fun person to be around right now. And sure enough, we ended up leaving. I, talked to that friend about it, since then. And I've been to one NFL game, and that was to support my since getting cut, and that was to support my best man in my wedding, who was then a receiver for the Dolphins. He's now just got signed by the Seattle Seahawks, River Craycraft. I was going to support him. It was his first game back from injury. I was with his family and on friends and everything. And I remember having to step away from the group to like gather myself because it was a really, really emotional time. It was about over a year after I got cut. It was like in October and November of 2023. And it was rough being at the stadium, going through seeing everybody tailgating and seeing everybody like really enjoying themselves in this complete opposite side of like more, not opposite, but like parallel path of enjoying football and it not being affected by your career or in the same ways as it might if you're a player. So yeah, like that's, a whole tangent and stuff, but it's been a long process of trying to become a fan again.
Yeah. No, I don't want to say like that's really cool because that feels dismissive. It's really cool that you can talk about it.
Yeah.
Because I think it's an important conversation. Just like, although obviously 99%, I'll say 100% of the people listening to this podcast have never played in the NFL. 99% of the people in the world can't exactly relate to that, but certainly have those experiences of like, oh yeah, like something happened and now I can't appreciate a thing I used to love.
Yes.
And like figuring out how to fall in love with that thing again can be really difficult.
Absolutely.
And yeah, it's funny. Like I mentioned, so first of all, I should say, the folks listening to this, obviously, like you mentioned, a Travis McElroy interview is coming, but you've had Clint McElroy, we said, Amy Vorpal, you also had Beth May and Ife Wadiwe, as well as a bunch of other people. I'm thinking of like the crossover with my audience.
No, like one episode will be a nerd where we talk about sports. The next episode will be an athlete or somebody in sports media that we talk about nerd stuff. So yes, the people in this in this fandom will probably recognize, the D&D names. Yeah.
It's so funny. I will also say, Iffy, I assume, has Iffy ever given you a hug? He's the greatest hugger in the entire world.
Iffy is one of my good friends. Yeah.
Yes.
He has lifted me up on many occasions.
Yeah. It's unbelievable. The first time I met him, he was like, bring it in, and just like enveloped me. And I was like, oh, this is the best hug I've ever gotten. It's funny. I like listening to your podcast. I was thinking about my percentage as well because it's changed so much for me. I've never been athletic, but I used to very much pay attention to baseball and football. I was at this is like the greatest sports flex I've got. I was at game 6 and 7 of the 2011 World Series when the Cardinals beat the Rangers. That's the David Freese walk-off after the 2 outs in the 9th, 2 outs in the 10th.
Tell me that wasn't the NLCS that you guys beat the Dodgers. I think it probably was.
It was, yeah.
That happened like 3 years in a row.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. I can't think if that was the year. It was Dodgers or Brewers. It was one of the two that year. I think it may have been Brewers that year. But yeah. But like I have a 3-year-old, and so like my TV time has become almost non-existent until he's asleep, because we tell him that he can't have screen time. It would be pretty wild if I was like, but I'm gonna watch sports, and so it's really interesting to like think about, like I'm in a fantasy football league that I've been in for like 20 plus years now.
Oh, cool.
It's a league that it goes back to the 90s. It's called the 40 League because it was people in college, and they at the time when we were all
40
in
Rex.
college together, we would they would draft every single week new players.
Oh, wow.
And the winner of the week the loser of the week had to buy the winner a 40. That was
Nice.
that's why it became the 40 League. And now we have like a normal one because we're all old with jobs. So the prospect of doing that is unthinkable.
Yeah.
But we do draft in the playoffs. We play through the playoffs, and we
Very cool.
redraft teams every week, which is very fun. Now it has like a trophy that's like a golden 40 that like travels around to folks.
Cool.
It's very fun. But yeah, like thinking of that, like it used to be such a huge part of my life, and now like just like I like periodically be like, oh yeah, how are the Cardinals doing? Because I haven't watched a game in 2.5 weeks. It's I know you've got a little one on the way.
I do.
Yeah, it's obviously life-changing is an understatement in the best possible way.
Yeah.
Have you given thought to because I got to take my son to his first baseball game was at Busch Stadium. Even though I do not live in St. Louis, we were up visiting, and I was like, this is when we're going. And we went to the team store, and it was Dad's credit card is out, get whatever you want.
Awesome.
Have you started giving thought of like that I get to introduce this new life to everything I love?
Yeah. And I don't want to. So we're having a little boy. He's due in July 18th is his due date, and we're obviously over the moon. But we don't. One thing I want to be very cognizant of. And one of the conversations that I got into with Clint and I got into with Travis McElroy was that I don't want to push my interests on him or on my kids. I think it's very important to let that grow and for that to be an option for them to enjoy the same things that I enjoy. I don't want to push him into sports if that's not something that he is like into at all. Like I think I'm going to be able to know him well enough. I'm going to introduce him to all the sports that I love. I'm going to introduce him to Dungeons and Dragons. I'm going to introduce him to the things that I like, but I also want to let him enjoy the things that kind of come naturally to him and that he becomes passionate about. Because otherwise, if you're, it's like reading for an English class. It's like any of the books that you're assigned to read, you're not going to enjoy as much as if you were to find that same exact book on your own and just become invested to it on your own. So I want him to enjoy that on his own. As far as fandoms, like introducing him to, yes, I'm gonna, of course. I have a cousin. My cousin's husband is introducing their daughter into D&D by running a My Little Pony like pre-written adventure, which is amazing. But it's a very I don't even know if there's any rolling that's happening. I think it's just like they're before bed. He's doing some prep work during the day, and then does like an hour of playtime maybe before bed. I will definitely be doing make believe and story time and D&D, but as far as sports is concerned, I don't know. I hope this changes, but I'm not like the biggest Cleveland Browns fan at the moment, as much as as I would have been if I spent all those years in Cleveland without being on the Browns, because it ends in a bittersweet way. It's a very common thing in the league to like not necessarily hold I don't have anything against the Browns. It's just like I need time to be able to like become a fan again, like we just talked about. So, but I will absolutely be introducing our boy to Dodgers baseball because that is what I grew up on. We had season tickets growing up, and we don't have them anymore. But I will, if he likes baseball, then I will push him into being a Dodgers fan. And I don't think there's anything he can do about that.
I've God, Dodger Stadium is so great. I used to live in LA, and I would go anytime the Cardinals were in town and get screamed at by Dodgers fans for wearing a Cardinals jersey. But just a fantastic I should say fantastic stadium, terrible parking lot, but fantastic stadium. Yeah, it's so fun. Like it was, I mentioned before we started recording, I live just outside of Austin, Texas. We have the Round Rock Express here is our like minor league team that is like really close to where I live. And I very cognizantly did not take my son to a game until we could go to St. Louis. It's like his first baseball game will be Busch Stadium. Like that is how this will happen.
But I do think that there's got to be a reverence for, like, I don't know. I think if you're becoming a baseball fan, there is a certain reverence within baseball that I don't think that other sports necessarily have, because the idea of growing in baseball stadium size until it's at its largest like pinnacle of the MLB stadium, I think is very special and doesn't really happen, probably in the NBA, but I don't think it doesn't happen in the same kind of like Coliseum like atmosphere,
Mhm.
like at a baseball stadium. In football, everybody goes to the NFL, they play through college football. And if you're playing college football, you have a game at least in a massive stadium. I went to University of Nebraska for my first 2 years, and they have sold out their 100,000 person stadium for the past 50 years. There is not a stadium in the NFL that is as big as that. So you don't have that like certain reverence of walking into a stadium and seeing this is the biggest place that I've ever played in my whole life. Like there is that reverence of like, it's a different level. But for baseball, these minor league games, as we're very well seeing with the Sacramento A's playing in a minor league stadium this year with like maybe a capacity of 5,000 people, and they're not selling out. There is such a massive jump from minor leagues to major leagues. And then, and obviously there's independent ball and all that. And, high school stadiums are dinky compared to these stadiums. I do love, I hope that you're able to bring your kid to some of those minor league games and show them like, hey, this is so much more percentage of baseball than the major leagues like stadium. And that's still like the 1% of people who are able to make it pro into the minor leagues. And I think there's this very fun idea of like introducing them to that different levels. And like, it doesn't mean that like that's less respect shown to the people who are playing in that smaller stadium. Honestly, I get more respect to those minor league players who have to go through those circumstances because they get paid very little and they don't have the same benefits as the MLB players do in with travel and everything. So yeah, it's just kind of a fun thing to think about.
Yeah, we have gotten to go to a couple of games since we went to Busch Stadium, and then I have like he's 3, so like he is still like
there's only so much he's taking.
Yeah, I mean he's still just like we're like, hey, remember we went to the baseball game? And he's like, is that the one where I got the ice cream and the baseball helmet? I'm like, yeah, that's the one. When we went to the Cardinals game, someone hit a grand slam. It's the first time I've ever been in person for a grand slam. It's his first game. He will never remember that. He was like, yeah, we got because some friends of mine, we got sweet tickets. And he was like, oh, that was where I got to get free hot dogs. It's like, yeah, that is where you got unlimited hot dogs to eat. As
long as it was memorable.
Yeah, it's so fun. I guess I'm gonna hard launch this right here. We'll find out who's listening to the podcast. We have another boy on the way.
Congratulations!
Thank you. In September. And
September what? What's the date? What's the
September 27th?
My dad is the 23rd. My mom's the 17th, and I'm the 7th. So we have a lot of September birthdays in our family.
Yeah, it's really fun. Like thinking about. I mean, like obviously you start having these. Like I don't know how do you have siblings?
I have a little sister. Yeah, we're 2 years apart.
Yeah, I'm an only, which I've said this before, but no one has ever been surprised about after knowing me for any amount of time. Once I was walking with some coworkers, and one person was like, "I'm an only child," and I was like, "Yeah, me too." And they said to the other person, "Oh, I never would have guessed." And then nothing to me. And I was like, okay, all right. But yeah, I'm excited. We're very excited. But it also means like, all right, we got to get our new Cardinals onesies and like the new, like you got to get the gear set up. But yeah, it's super fun. Like thinking about, like you said, like obviously, I mean, the St. Louis Cardinals is like a deal breaker, right? Like you have to, if you're going to be in a baseball, I don't know what it is about baseball. I think it's because it feels so generational. I was talking to someone recently and they were like,
Cardinals and Dodgers, they're just such old franchises.
Yes. Yeah. Like I know recently I was someone and they were like, I have this friend in Oklahoma and they're a huge Cardinals fan. I was like, I can tell you why. It's because of the radio days, and that was the market for St. Louis. And so it carved into Oklahoma. And so they were their like grandfather was a Cardinals fan, which then has just been passed down, even though it is no longer that market anymore.
It's a similar thing to, I think, when I was in Nebraska, there were Braves fans everywhere. And I think that relates to the 90s Braves being a really great team. And TV rights were sending Braves games to Nebraska. So even though it's halfway across the country, all the baseball fans in Nebraska were fans of the Atlanta Braves.
Yeah. And it just feels it feels so, like I said, so generational of just like, yeah, this is like football teams you kind of pick, like, but like baseball, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just because I
Yeah.
love baseball so much, and
I think
also growing up
for
in St.
me, I
Louis
know
is a
it's
baseball city.
right. Right. For me, it's also super anecdotal because I was raised on baseball. We liked the Lakers. We didn't have a football team
Right, and now you
when
have
I was
two.
growing up. Yeah. Yeah.
You took ours back.
I claim ignorance. I don't know. I don't I am I will root I don't even root for I don't know. I just enjoy football at this point. I think it's a far less regional thing. I think that's the thing is like it's a very regional sport, baseball is.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, it is. Anytime I post a video about like being like, I don't post a lot about like being a Cardinals fan, but every once in a
Yeah.
while, like something will come up, and every time, guaranteed, there's someone in my comments who's like, "As a Cubs fan, I hate you now," and it's like, yeah,
It's yeah.
there are rivalries in baseball that like,
Yeah. It's the rivalries, but it's also like if you find out that somebody is a different fan. I think the rivalries in baseball, like I always think about somebody differently when I find out that they're a San Francisco Giants fan. It's like I thought we were going to be able to be close.
yeah. Yeah, it's so much easier because living in Texas, it was so great when Houston moved to the AL because it's like, great, now I don't have to like fight with people about this. Like, this is going to be way better for me.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have to deal with this. Yeah,
It is fun though with Athletics Check learning like what teams people are a fan of. Like I haven't had him on the podcast. I'm looking forward to it. But Brian Murphy is a big Jets fan. I don't think he's as big of a Jets fan as he is like a UFC and a WWE fan. Iffy is a massive Lakers fan and Kings fan, but you can find that out from his social media. Clint McElroy is a massive Reds fan. It's just you know that's just not something that they necessarily feel like they can probably promote or be like a part of their persona because of that kind of clash between nerds and jocks. And it's honestly, especially, it's an interesting thing, but it's within male friendships, sports is oftentimes a really big connector. And, it's a generalization, but to not be able to have that with like, or for some people within like the nerd community to feel like that's maybe something that's like othering or like kind of setting themselves in a way that like might set somebody to turn somebody the wrong way against them or get the wrong impression. I'm hoping to open up not only the people in the sports community to the nerd world, but also people in the nerd world, showing them that there is community to be had within the sports world.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like, I think there is there's the high school days, right? Of like I said, I was not athletic. I've been a nerd my whole life. And like, I've got picked on by, not usually jocks. It was just like mean kids.
Sure.
But I think there is that, like classic clash that feels very outdated at this point. Cause like you said, like nerddom is just excitement about a thing. And yeah, it feels important. I know you did mention though, this just feels ironic of like, I'm trying to bring these two groups together. You were on a segment called Nerds versus Jocks for Nobody Asked. Just really,
I think
like,
it was
everything you believe in.
It was comedians versus jocks, which we can
that's right. Yes.
We can all agree that the comedians should be the ones getting beat up, not the nerds.
Yes, that's right. Although, I mean, what is a nerd if not a comedian?
No,
like, we're all nerds for comedy. Yeah, that was a super fun segment. Of what, for people who haven't seen it, they tried to get you to not be able to catch a football by you had to wear lobster claws that you then dunked in a bucket of butter, and seemed to impact you not at all.
I'm so glad that it didn't come off as very hard. I felt very lucky that I didn't. So it was I knew part of what I was getting into when I got there on the day, but I had never met Ellie before. I was going against Ellie Woods, and who's re-emerging into the dropout scene, having been on a lot of College Humor stuff previously. She's such a sweetheart, so funny, and I knew that I was going to be showing up on the same day as other athletes. I got to introduce the oh gosh, I'm blanking on his name right now, but the guy who did the basketball episode, going up against Brian. That was it was just such a fun day. And I remember seeing Iffy doing his soccer thing right before I was there. And the field was, honestly, it was pretty a lot of gopher holes and potholes and stuff. And I was a little bit nervous, especially when they said, yeah, go long, try to catch the ball with these lobster claws. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll do my best. And the thing was, like, I didn't think the lobster claws were going to be as hard as they were, because there's no thumb hole. And I think I might have said that during the episode, but it's just like a plastic thumb, like pinned onto the outside of this like claw that I can only fit like 3 fingers into. So just, it was all, they say, like, when you're learning how to catch, like, catch it like you might catch an egg. It's like, catch it as if it's like you need to give it a lot of cushion. I'm sorry, there's a drag race happening outside my window right now. Feel free to cut that out. But anyway, catching with those lobster claws and then dumping them in butter, and then having to go run like a long, deep route with my buddy who's trying to get me to drop it by throwing it as high as possible. It was a fun time, but it was, I think, I would love to be able to do it again and do it like some really like scientific, like, experimentation with it. Whereas this was like very fun in games and stuff. I really want to like dive into like, okay, how can we debilitate the athletes in a very specific way and like measure it against the control of the comedian. Yeah. And maybe we can do that if there's a season 2.
Oh man, that would be so much fun. Yeah, I will say, like, I hope there's a season 2, because it feels like the lesson of season 1 was lean more into the nerddom of it. Like, yeah. It was, I thought, a very fun show, but I was like, I want more of, like, every time someone would come on and be like, here's the weird science, I'm like, keep doing this. This is what I want. People you want can send jokes out of the room for a minute and like give me this weird stuff.
People want more Mythbusters, I think, is what we can all agree on.
Everyone just wants more Mythbusters, and who doesn't want dumb Mythbusters?
Yeah, exactly.
I know Iffy posted one time that he saw, was it Adam from Mythbusters, I think, and was like,
probably.
Told him like
he's the one who's far more socially available.
Yes, he was like, he told him a segment they were doing, and Adam was like, we thought about doing that for Mythbusters, but we thought it was too dumb. And if he was like, we're on the right path, there you go. But I don't know what it was. All right. Good. I realized we've been talking for a while, and it feels like no time has passed. This is great. And I don't want to like lose sight of. You also did, like, I mentioned it briefly, but you had a very successful Kickstarter. Sync launched last November-ish. September. Oh my God, has it been that long already?
It's horrible.
Yeah,
it's been a good amount of time. Yeah,
but like a really cool Kickstarter of. Well, I guess, do you want to explain what Sync is? Because
please,
it's pirates. Who doesn't love pirates?
Who doesn't love pirates? So Sync began as a collaboration that I really wanted to work with both Rick, who's my longtime DM and writing partner, as well as Sam Rusk, who is an amazing artist within the D&D community, tattoo artist specifically, and their specialty is traditional tattoo art, but with a pop twist. So they call it pop traditional. And I asked Sam, hey, if we, this all started because I asked Sam because I knew that they hadn't done a D&D supplement before, or done any kind of like official D&D art or whatever, or third-party art. And I asked them, if you could do a D&D supplement, what would it be? And they said, I think I'm a big dungeon crawler nerd, but I also think that pirates work really well for the art style. So I said, why not just a pirate dungeon crawler? So they said, yeah, that sounds fun. Maybe someday we can make it or something. I think it wasn't even that, like, it was so dismissive of like, oh, maybe it's just like a question that he was asking. And then 3 weeks later, Rick and I come back to her and say, yeah, so we have this thing, we're calling it Treasures of Deep Grotto. We would love for you to do the art for it. And it's not even like I would love for you to do the art for it. I'm kind of just, if you don't do the art for it, it's not going to be a thing. So do you want to do this? So we made Treasures of Deep Grotto. We translated that into a pitch document for publishers at PAX Unplugged 2023. And Hit Point Press decided that they wanted to take a chance on us, so they are publishing the adventure and partnered with us on the Kickstarter, which ran last September. We were able to raise $280,000 on Kickstarter and another 30 on BackerKit, so we were able to pass 300K. And we are deep in the process of continuing to develop and write it. We are running low on time on having to actually write it, so it's a little bit stressful, but We are really still very excited about it, and
Yeah.
we have. It's very specifically, it's pirates, it's tattoos, it's dungeons. Tasha's Cauldron introduced to 5e the idea of magic item tattoos, and we are taking that ball and running with it. We have designed over 55 magic item tattoos. All of them are going to be available in the book. Some of them are available now that you can see on either our Kickstarter updates or our Discord page, which you can join at our social media channels. And yeah, and then it's a dungeon adventure, like kind of a book of dungeons type of adventure where it all can kind of combine into this campaign where you're fighting this eldritch devil that is creating his warlocks all across the sea to take over the seat of of death. Basically, all the souls being like passing on the seas are now not going to Davy Jones' locker, but now he's collecting them. So that's the whole kind of setting for the adventure, and you can get a taste of it with Treasures of Deep Grotto, which was a free RPG Day release last year and is available on our website for free. But we also did a one-shot with Critical Role called Fate of the Fogweaver, and that has been translated into a one-shot that you can get available now on our Kickstarter if you back the Kickstarter or a backer kit, or it will be soon available on Hit Point Press for $5.
Yeah. Oh man, that's so fun. Yeah, I don't know, I get so weirdly excited when I see like a Kickstarter come to fruition of people who very much deserve it. Of like, oh, this is a great idea. I'm really the people involved seem fantastic. Like it's always fun to see those hits and then like hit really big.
Thank you.
But yeah, I know you've played it. You've played it some. Like I think did you play some games at Gen Con last year? Am I like that's a
Yes, no.
yeah.
Last year was it was stressful. San Diego Comic Con, we had a game that went really well. We had a stage game that went super well. Gen Con stage game went great as well. Unfortunately, that one we lost Rick, our co-writer, to COVID. He was not able to join us in Indianapolis, which meant that I had to take over his table games, and I was trying to run all the table games while also doing all of like the stage stuff and all of the other stuff that I was doing, and it was stressful. But all Gen Con is stressful in general, so it was just
Yeah.
part of the deal.
Yeah. I left Gen Con with COVID. I did not get to Gen Con with COVID. I've told this story before. I was walking down the hallway at Gen Con and there were two people in front of me. And one guy was like, hey, do you want to try a drink or try like whatever drink he was having? And he was like, and the other guy was like, I kind of have a scratchy throat. And I was like, are you kidding me? And the guy was like, and he's like, I don't know what it is. I feel fine otherwise, but I woke up and my throat was scratchy. And I was like, what do you mean you don't know what it is? It's COVID. How could you have forgotten already?
Yeah. I mean, con crud is like, absolutely a thing as well. Honestly, I think it's just lack of sleep.
Yeah.
I was having to deal with that last week. In this past week, I just all the lack of sleep is catching up with me. So, anyway.
But yes, all right, we got to sing.
COVID, no fun.
I wanted to make sure we got it. Do you have plans to get Abria on? She counts as a jock and nerd,
she
right?
Absolutely does. I am really excited to get Abria on. We haven't scheduled anything yet, but she has said that she wants to do it, so I'm holding her to that.
She says she wants to do a lot of stuff that she
it's true. And then
she
find
told
out
me she was going to text me something this week, and I have now had 4 unanswered text messages to her.
Welcome to being one of Abria's friends. And ask anybody; it's the same exact experience.
I know. Yeah,
and we love her for it.
Yes.
But Abria absolutely is a jock. In fact, we explored her jock history as well as Iffy's and Tank Tolman's, the social media extraordinaire Viking on the internet, who's getting introduced to Dungeons and Dragons and playing different actual plays. He was a UFC fighter. Iffy is a weightlifter. Abria was a Division I college athlete in like 3 different sports. So I got to explore all of that at PAX Unplugged last year. In my panel, Athletes in Tabletop, which I probably should just change its name to Athletics Check at this point. So
got to get that cross promotion going.
Exactly. It was like, I didn't want it to originally be like, oh, I want this to be a podcast thing. I wanted it to be like supplement to the podcast, but it's like, it should just be the podcast at this point. But it was a very, very fun panel at PAX, and I wish we had recorded it. We didn't, unfortunately, record it, but at the panel, the last slide of the panel was getting to announce that I am writing the newest supplement for Kids on Bikes, which is Kids in Cleats.
Oh, that's amazing.
Kids in Cleats, I'm working with Hunters Entertainment to make that an official supplement. In fact, Abria is going to collaborate on it and make the rules for Scuppers, the Quidditch-like game
Oh
from of
yeah,
Mystics
yeah,
Magic.
yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
So yeah, we're really excited about that. I'm so busy and trying to get as much stuff done as possible, but it's all exciting things.
Yeah, that's super cool. Yeah, I've never gotten to play Kids on Bikes, any like variation of it, but obviously, as like a Dimension 20 fan, I've seen a lot of it.
Right.
And yeah, I love this. The mishmash of things of like a Mentopolis, Miss Mag, where it's like, all right, we're gonna take this
Right.
idea and we're gonna like crush it into the format that we want it to be, which is very fun and feels very like, specifically that game feels so narrative focused.
Oh yeah.
Really lends itself into actual play. I know you mentioned the Patreon for Athletics Check. If folks were interested in joining, what do they get? I know the answer, but what do they get if they join the Patreon?
You, if you would like to join the Athletics Check Patreon at patreon.com/athletics-check-pod, you will be able to get all of our bonus content, which we try to get up as quickly as possible, around a week after the episode goes live, because we go every other week for the podcast whenever we can. And we run a little bonus adventure for each of our guests, very tailored to whether it's the adventure, like for Clint, we ran like his high school versus his rival high school growing up, but it was like as if they were like dwarven armies going against each other. For Beth May, it was this was kind of going on the back of her marathon training that she did during COVID, and it was kind of like hunting down a deer and like kind of just endurance like hunting and stuff, and it just made a whole joke about that. It's just like a little D&D adventure that I run for like 20 to 30 minutes for our guests. And oftentimes when it's the sports guests, it's their first time playing Dungeons and Dragons, which I think always makes for magic when you find an entertaining person who's never played D&D. So, yeah, that's kind of the gist of what you get as a patron for Athletics Check.
Yeah, one of the things I adore about new players to D&D, and like you get to see it on actual plays. I've DM'd for a bunch of new players. I got to DM at like a library day in Austin for the employees of the library, and it was like people could sign up if they wanted to play, and I had people who had never played before, and it's that moment of, because it happens in Dungeons and Drag Queens, it happened in Titan Takedown, like for people that are watching Dimension 20, of when they realize the thing they say becomes real in the world.
Yeah. So they can do whatever they want.
It's so magical of just like, yeah, I have the player's like, yeah, I have a walkie-talkie, and I'm like, okay, and they're like, wait, what? And I do, and I'm like, sure. I mean, we got to make it magic because I've told you that this is a high fantasy setting. But yeah, you got a crystal that can communicate with the upstairs. What's up? And they're just like, I just said it, and it's real. Yeah, it's always so fun. I assume like. I assume like you get those experiences like even with NFL players, like you were running NFL player like D&D games. Well, I guess forever now feels like. Obviously, like those moments, I assume, are just as special with folks who probably aren't expecting to fall in love with the game the way that they will eventually.
Yeah, no, it was very special getting to run for teammates, because from the very first time I played D&D, I knew it was special, but I also knew that it could be so much more special when you're playing with people that you have a relationship with. My first games were being played at a comic book shop, in which I became friends with my fellow players, but it was never like, we would see each other at those games. It was never something that I brought people together or was already friends with a group and played with them. So that's when I decided I have to start introducing my friends to it, because nobody in my life I'm able to like bring in people who already play. I just didn't know anybody who played. So I introduced my 3 nerdiest teammates at UNLV, the school that I graduated from, to D&D. We had like probably about like 6 to 10 sessions or something, and it was super fun. Obviously impossible to schedule anything when you're a college student and a college athlete trying to play D&D. But when I was in Cleveland, when I got signed by Cleveland in 2020, I decided that like I wanted to introduce more of my teammates to it. And from the moment that I got signed and I decided to tell people that I was a D&D nerd, it wasn't like it wasn't a public thing that I was like made known on my social media or anything like that. Browns fans specifically told me I needed to get Miles into Dungeons and Dragons because he's a big notable nerd. He loves anime. He loves mostly anime, but he also loves what's dinosaur bones? What am I thinking of? Paleontology. He loves paleontology. So finally, but Miles is like, that's like going into, it's not exactly the same thing, but going into that situation and trying to being the newest player, especially in the middle of COVID, and somebody who probably wasn't like necessarily expected to make the team. I technically didn't make the team. I made practice squad and then would had to get brought up to make the team. But going up to him to ask him if he want to play Dungeons and Dragons is kind of like going up to the most important person in your office. It's like, and that you just got hired at, to ask if they wanted to play D&D, whether it's like, it's not necessarily the same as like the president or the CEO of the company, because there actually is one of those with the Browns. But it's like going up to, you know, he's the number one draft pick in like the draft that he got taken, I think 2018 or something. So, but Miles is I had already become like, you know, talked to him a handful of times. He's one of my good friends. And, but I saw him wearing a Stranger Things shirt one day at the facility. And it was like my third or fourth time seeing him wear one of those, like a Stranger Things shirt. So I said, I got to ask him at some point. So I went up to him and said, hey, would you ever want to play the game that they play at Stranger Things? And he said, yes. And I was able to then bring Wyatt in through our other teammate, Kendall Lamb. And then we had a number of sessions. I think ended up being like 10 sessions. We got through an arc that got the finale of which got covered by Sports Illustrated, which was absolutely insane. We had like one episode of a second arc, or one session of a second arc that got covered by ESPN for Sports Center, which was also absolutely insane. So getting to not only see them fall in love with the game away from the cameras, because that was my goal, was like, I don't want to out them as D&D people, because then people it's going to become like a performance thing. I want to have that be something that we really enjoy ourselves. And then after I got my touchdown, the critical role stuff happened, I started getting more attention as a D&D player. I asked them like, hey, would you guys be down if like we took a picture or something and said, hey, this is our D&D group? And they said yes. So that's when, you know, everybody starts coming out of the woodwork. We had a charity game, which was really special, in which Abria and Iffy flew out to Cleveland to do the poster. That poster is from that event. So getting to introduce people to D&D, especially people that I know, and especially like teammates, is really, really special to me. And it's something that I probably won't really get the opportunity to do in terms of like a football teammate again. But I'm always going to be looking to introduce more people into tabletop gaming.
Yeah, I've gotten to do that through my work. I very quickly, when whichever seasons of Stranger Things came out that Vecna was technically in, whatever, that came out, and then we had like our all company retreat like 2 weeks after it, and people were coming up to me like, "Hey, you're into D&D, right? What do you know about Vecna?" And I was like, "This is the greatest day of my life. Let me tell you everything about him."
And it'll not help you watch the show at all.
It's not about the show at all. Someone did want to know from my Patreon, you mentioned Miles. What Miles' real life D&D class would be?
Real life? I want to say, I think that he would be an Eldritch Knight fighter, because he's not a paladin. He's a defensive lineman. I just don't think that defensive lineman can be paladin. There's too much viciousness in their bones to be this holy warrior. And Miles can be a vicious dude when it comes to the field. I think that there is absolutely some intellectualism that he has, which makes me think, okay, maybe not a barbarian, but a fighter absolutely makes sense. And I think he brings in a little bit of magic in there. So I'd say Eldritch Knight.
I love it. All right, Johnny, if folks want to find you or Sync or whatever, you mentioned where the Patreon is. Where can they find you on the internet if in some way they're watching this and don't already follow you?
You can follow me on Instagram, Blue Sky, at do I have anything else? TikTok, I guess. I'm going to start doing a little bit of Ren Fair TikTok because that made me popular last year, and Ren Fair's back. At Johnny Stanton IV. I'm the fourth, JohnnyStantonIV. And
it's a very D&D feeling, like to be the fourth.
The fourth, yeah.
Yes.
I haven't made a legacy character like that before, of like somebody who's named after family and like the 16th or whatever, Pope Benedict the 16th. You can find Sync at Sync RPG on our Instagram, and then from that Instagram, I highly recommend joining our Discord, which is in the link in bio. So Athletics Check also has an Instagram account, Athletics Check Pod.
Amazing. This was so delightful. I'm going to guess that you'll be at some conferences that I'll be at some point in the future.
I mean, I would on any normal year, I would say absolutely. This year, baby's coming right before San Diego Comic-Con and Gen Con.
That's super fair. Yeah. No, that makes sense.
I still plan on going to PAX Unplugged. So if you're at PAX Unplugged, I'll see you there.
PAX Unplugged is on my list. Wait, that's in December, right?
Yes,
that's
early
enough
December.
months after the end of September to leave my wife, right? But we'll see. Amazing. Thank you so much. This has been an absolute delight. I don't know how to end an interview, so I'm just going to hit stop recording.